A 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff.
When allies begin to act like adversaries, this is no longer a trade conflict. This is an economic revolution, and we are now at its epicenter. Donald Trump's decision to impose a 25% tariff on all automobiles not manufactured in the United States is not merely an economic measure. It is a punch to the jaw of the entire global trade system, and especially to Europe. Germany, Japan, Canada, Mexico, countries that have spent decades building trade relationships with America, suddenly found themselves on the other side of the barricades. And what is most dangerous, they have started to respond. According to official data, the United States imports approximately 3 million vehicles from Germany every year. That amounts to $35 billion in pure export revenue for the German economy. And now, every BMW, Mercedes, or Audi will become at least $5,000 to $7,000 more expensive for American consumers. This is not just a blow to the premium segment. This is a signal even flagships are not protected. Now think about it. How many consumers in the United States are willing to overpay such sums in the context of inflationary pressure and declining purchasing power? Even setting emotions aside, the numbers speak for themselves. In Germany, the automotive industry accounts for 5% of the country's GDP and more than 800,000 jobs. More than one-third of all vehicles produced in Germany are exported to the United States. If this supply chain is broken, Germany could face its most serious industrial downturn since the early 2000s. Berlin's response was swift. Chancellor Olaf Scholz declared that Germany will not stand by and is prepared to introduce retaliatory tariffs on American agricultural products, technologies, and digital services. The European Commission is reviewing sanction packages of up to 30% on items such as soybeans, corn, and meat, as well as up to 20% on IT giants like Amazon and Apple. What does this mean? We are entering an era of full-scale economic confrontation, and this time, without geographic front lines, but with billions in losses on every side. Now, pay attention. While Europe prepares economic strikes, Japan enters the game. Silently, without harsh statements, Japan is making a move that could prove far more dangerous than any tariff. It is beginning a mass sell-off of U.S. Treasury bonds, the backbone of U.S. government debt financing. In just the past few months, tens of billions of dollars have been sold. Why is this important? Because Japan is one of the largest creditors of the United States. And if Tokyo continues to dump bonds, the dollar's exchange rate could collapse. Loan interest rates rise, inflation accelerates, and the budget deficit expands. This is not a science fiction scenario. It is a direct consequence of broken trust. The reason? New American tariffs on electric vehicles from Japan. Toyota, Honda, Nissan, companies that for decades provided Americans with cars, are now left in isolation. And Tokyo decides, if you hit us in manufacturing, we will hit your financial stability. The question, how many more allies are ready to strike America's weak spot? The answer comes from the north. Canada, one of the closest trade partners of the United States, suddenly finds itself under tariff pressure. And it does not simply respond with a mirror move, it begins to pivot away from the U.S. as its sole strategic partner. In February 2025, the United States imposed 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods except for oil and gas. In response, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney called it an economic invasion, while Justin Trudeau labeled it a direct violation of sovereignty. Canada announces a boycott of American products, strengthens cultural independence, and redirects trade toward Europe. The European Union urgently revives the CETA agreement, granting Canada the status of honorary partner at the 2025 Hanover Industrial Fair. Europe and Canada are no longer dependent players. They are building their own bloc. And this is a warning bell for Washington. And if you think this is already the peak of tension, think again. Mexico is acting differently, but no less strategically. Silence is its weapon. President Claudia Sheinbaum does not engage in harsh rhetoric, but is preparing targeted countermeasures. U.S. tariffs on auto parts? The response? measures on the export of tomatoes, beer, avocados, and agricultural machinery. Everything that matters to the average American consumer. Now let's reflect. When the United States' largest allies, Germany, Canada, Japan, and Mexico, begin to distance themselves simultaneously, is this still trade policy? Or is it the beginning of isolation? If you spend $8 billion on a military aircraft but cannot fully control it, who does it really belong to in the end? That is exactly the question Germany is asking itself today. The scandal surrounding the F-35 fighter jets that the United States sells to NATO allies erupted at the height of trade conflicts. The built-in kill switch feature, which allows Washington to remotely disable these aircraft, has alarmed even the most loyal partners. Berlin is seriously considering backing out of the $8.4 billion contract that was set to purchase 35 F-35Is. This is not just a whim. It is driven by fear. What if relations with the United States deteriorate? Could the German military end up in a situation where key elements of its air force are no longer under its own control? While Germany is still contemplating, Canada and Portugal have already taken a step back. Portugal has frozen its procurement plans, and Canada has begun to review its $19 billion contract. The question is being raised more and more frequently. Is it time for NATO to seek new sources of defense? Against this backdrop, Europe is launching its own sixth-generation fighter jet programs. Germany, France, and Spain are working on the Future Combat Air System, FCAS. The United Kingdom, Italy, and Japan are developing the Global Combat Air Program, GCAP. If these projects are completed by 2040, Europe will, for the first time since the end of World War II, achieve full air independence. This is no longer just about replacing one aircraft with another. This is a new military doctrine. Europe, which for decades stood under the protective umbrella of the United States, no longer believes in the permanence of the alliance. And this raises a question. What will remain of NATO's strategic architecture if trust collapses? The answer might come from Volkswagen. Yes, you heard that right. One of the world's largest automakers has announced it is considering entering the defense sector. The reason? A decline in demand for civilian vehicles and a surge in defense industry funding within the European Union. The Rearm Europe Fund has launched multi-billion-dollar investments in military development. Civilian giants are moving toward where the money and security now lie. We are on the threshold of a transformation of the entire European economy, from a civilian model to a hybrid one, where manufacturing and technology are tied to defense. Meanwhile, U.S. markets are in turmoil. According to J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs, the S&P 500 index has fallen by 12%, and the Dow Jones has dropped by 10%. This is the largest decline since the 2008 crisis. And all of this is happening amid uncertainty caused by tariff policies and international backlash. Fear is seeping into everyday life. Prices for consumer electronics, automobiles, and construction materials have increased by 5 to 15%. Middle-class families are losing purchasing power. And if the situation does not change, according to IMF forecasts, the U.S. economy could contract by up to negative 2% in 2026. This means rising unemployment, a decline in investments, and the freezing of new projects. Inside America itself, division. The Republican Party is losing its footing in key states like Florida and Wisconsin. Democrats are gaining strength. Trump's support, once unshakable in these regions, is beginning to crack. People feel that tariffs are not hitting China or Europe. They're hitting them personally, through the grocery bill, the loan payment, the salary that just got cut. America is entering a recession, both political and economic at the same time. Trump, in his effort to protect domestic manufacturers, has triggered a chain reaction that strikes allies, markets, consumers, and, ultimately, his own political career. And here's the key moment. What should the United States do now? They have two paths ahead. Lower tariffs, return to negotiations, and attempt to restore trust in themselves as a global partner. Or continue the confrontation, risking complete loss of control over the global economic architecture, the very one they built over the last 70 years. Both paths are risky. The first would require a public admission of mistakes, something Trump is not prepared to do. The second could lead to isolation, the loss of allies, and a blow to the dollar if countries like Japan and China continue to offload American assets. Now think about it. If Germany, Japan, Canada, Mexico, and the European Union are stepping out from under U.S. influence, who will remain by Washington's side? We are living in a moment when geopolitics is redrawing the map of the world, not with bullets, but with tariffs, not with tanks, but with stock market indexes. The trade war initiated by Trump has become the trigger for a global shift. Allies are turning into competitors, trust is being replaced by calculation, and stability by a tense struggle for independence. The question is not who will win the economic war. The question is who will survive it at all. And right now, a new reality is being shaped. Perhaps without America at the center. Perhaps with multiple poles of power. Perhaps with a Europe that is no longer afraid to go its own way. And what do you think? Can the United States regain trust, or has that train already left the station? Share your opinion, because what's happening affects all of us. And this is only the beginning.